Tension is rising once again across Europe, but this time the front line isn't just inside Ukraine. It's inside the West itself. For the first time since the war began, disagreements among Western nations are becoming more visible, and Russia is moving quickly to take advantage of these divisions. From political clashes in the United States, to economic fatigue in Europe, to strategic uncertainty across NATO, the West's unity is facing its toughest test yet. And every moment of hesitation is an opportunity for Moscow. So the big question now is this: what happens if Western unity breaks? And how would that change the future of the Ukraine war and global security? Today on Global Affairs Report, we break down what's happening, why it matters, and what it could mean for the world. Before we dive deeper, if this is your first time here, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. We bring you clear, unbiased global political analysis every day. And if you find this breakdown helpful, feel free to like, share, and help others stay informed. Now let's take a closer look at the cracks forming in the Western alliance and how Russia is taking advantage. Why Western unity is weakening now. The Ukraine war began with extraordinary unity. NATO stood together, Europe agreed on sanctions, and the United States committed massive military and economic support. But today, more than 2 years later, that unity is showing strain. 1. Military fatigue in Europe. Several European nations are experiencing what analysts call support fatigue. Countries that once shipped artillery, tanks, and ammunition at high speed are now slowing their deliveries. Ammunition stockpiles are low, defense production is behind schedule, and many governments are telling their citizens that the budget can no longer stretch to support Ukraine at the same intensity. Number 2. Political division in the United States. Meanwhile, in the U.S., Ukraine funding has become one of the most divisive issues in Washington. Congressional fights over military aid have slowed down assistance. Some leaders are strongly supportive, while others argue that America should pull back and focus at home. This uncertainty sends a dangerous message to both allies and enemies. The U.S. may not be as reliable as it once was. 3. NATO's strategic rebalancing. Within NATO, different countries now have different priorities. Eastern European countries like Poland and the Baltic states want more support for Ukraine. But Western European countries are increasingly turning attention to domestic economic problems and energy concerns. 4. Economic stress. Across the West, inflation, rising energy prices, and growing public dissatisfaction are pushing governments to justify every dollar spent abroad. All of these factors are creating real pressure, and Russia is watching closely. How Russia is exploiting these divisions. Russia has a long history of using disagreements within the West to its advantage. Today, that strategy is more visible than ever. 1. Disinformation campaigns. Russia is intensifying online influence efforts. These campaigns target Western populations with messages like, "Your government is wasting money on Ukraine. Europe should stop supporting the war. NATO is responsible for the conflict." The goal is simple: weaken public support and force politicians to soften their stance. Number 2. Strategic military escalation. Whenever Western countries argue or delay aid, Russia often responds with new military actions on the battlefield. These escalations serve two purposes: to gain military ground and to show the world that Ukraine cannot hold out without Western unity. 3. Diplomatic outreach to isolated states. Russia is strengthening relationships with countries frustrated with the West. Through oil deals, trade agreements, and military cooperation, Moscow is trying to pull certain nations away from NATO's influence. Number 4. Weaponizing slow Western aid. Whenever ammunition deliveries slow down, Russia increases pressure. Whenever sanctions relax, Russia moves quickly to rebuild resources. The message from Moscow is clear: the more divided the West becomes, the stronger Russia stands. Ukraine's current position. Ukraine is feeling the pressure of these Western divisions. On the front line, every delay in Western support has real consequences. 1. Ammunition shortages. Ukraine has repeatedly stated that it is running low on key supplies: artillery shells, drone systems, and air defense missiles. With Russia producing weapons at record speed, Ukraine's supply gap is growing. 2. Morale pressure. Ukrainian soldiers and civilians are experiencing fatigue. When political arguments delay international aid, morale drops. People begin to wonder if the world is turning away. 3. Vulnerable front lines. Russia is trying to exploit every gap. Areas that were stable months ago are now under renewed attack. Without consistent Western support, Ukraine's defensive lines are harder to maintain. 4. Diplomatic urgency. Ukrainian leaders have increased their visits to European capitals and Washington in recent months. They need guarantees of weapons, financial support, and long-term security. For Ukraine, this isn't just a war of survival, it's a race against time. Europe's internal conflicts. Europe is not united on how to move forward, and this division is creating more uncertainty. 1. Eastern Europe, strong supporters. Countries like Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia see the war as a threat to their own borders. They warn that if Russia succeeds in Ukraine, their countries could be next. Number 2. Western Europe, rising fatigue. France, Germany, Italy, and other Western nations are dealing with protests, economic frustration, and political instability. Many citizens are asking, how long will this war last? How much money will we keep sending? When will our lives return to normal? 3. Economic pain. Europe's energy crisis and high inflation make the cost of military aid harder to explain to the public. Governments that were united at the start are now under pressure. Number 4. The growing Ukraine fatigue narrative. A dangerous shift is happening. More people in Europe are calling for a negotiated peace, even if it means Ukraine loses territory. This is exactly the outcome Russia wants. The role of the United States. The United States is the backbone of Ukraine's defense, but American politics are becoming unpredictable. 1. Deep divisions in Congress. Some lawmakers want to continue supporting Ukraine strongly. Others believe the U.S. should stop spending money abroad and focus on domestic issues. This disagreement slows down aid and sends mixed signals across NATO. 2. Impact of the U.S. election. Every election season brings political messaging. Some politicians are using Ukraine as part of their campaign strategy. This creates uncertainty, not just for Americans, but for European allies who depend on U.S. leadership. Number 3. America's strategic stance. Despite political disagreements, the U.S. continues to provide intelligence, training, weapons, and financial support. But the long-term future depends on who leads the country after the next election. If the U.S. pulls back, Europe cannot carry the weight alone, and Russia knows this perfectly well. Global powers react. While the West is divided, other major powers are watching and acting. 1. China's strategic calculations. China is supporting Russia economically through trade and technology. Beijing sees the Ukraine war as a way to weaken the West and shift global influence toward Asia. 2. Iran's involvement. Iran is supplying weapons and drones to Russia. This partnership strengthens both countries and increases the war's intensity. 3. Neutral countries choosing sides. Nations like India, Brazil, and South Africa are trying to balance relationships with both Russia and the West. They avoid taking clear positions, but their economic partnerships influence the outcome. The Ukraine war is no longer a regional issue. It has become a global test of power. Possible outcomes. Analysts now see several possible futures for this conflict. Scenario 1. Western unity collapses. If aid slows dramatically, Ukraine could be forced into negotiations on Russia's terms. This would reshape borders and give Russia major geopolitical influence. Scenario 2. Western unity stabilizes. If Europe and the U.S. recommit to long-term support, Ukraine can hold its ground and prevent further Russian advances. Scenario 3. A frozen conflict. The war could drag on for years, similar to Korea or the Middle East. Neither side wins decisively. Scenario 4. Escalation beyond Ukraine. Rising tension in Belarus, Moldova, or the Baltic states could pull NATO into deeper conflict. These scenarios depend almost entirely on the decisions Western governments make in the coming months. Final thoughts. Western unity is under more pressure today than at any other point in this war. Russia is exploiting every crack, every disagreement, every delay. Ukraine is fighting not just a military battle, but a political one, a battle for continued support, stability, and survival. The next few months could decide the direction of this conflict and shape the future of Europe for decades. Now it's your turn. Do you think Western unity will hold, or will it collapse under political and economic pressure? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you want clear, daily global political updates, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us again here on Global Affairs Report.